Okay, yeah. Hey everyone. So I think this is kind of one of the first in I don't know if it's going to be a series or if it's going to be one off, but I've enjoyed listening to was it Guy Raz from NPR, like How I Built This. There's a podcast. Like they kind of celebrate the stuff that's already baked. We're kind of tasting the ingredients as we're putting them into the pan here. So,
Mhm.
uh, Hobbs is a true pioneer, and he loves to tinker and build, and he does it in public and doesn't hold back. So I think it's really cool. So we'll just kind of kick off with him walking through how the sausage is made, and we'll use his AI 101 resource for like kind of as the backdrop. So it's less about what he made, and it's more about how he's building this and making it and thinking about it and failing and whatnot. I will, before we start, I'm actually going to read through some of the answers, what people answered on the registration question, which is like, what are you building or what would you like to build? So I'll just go through so to get
Mhm.
an idea. Obviously, not everyone's here who signed up, but most people came. So I won't name names, but just the variety of answers. So local AI models for patient chart review, healthcare visualization library, health app aggregator, question mark. Building a repo for LLM prompts to manage my solo consulting firm, LLC as code. Front end app for organizations, EHR, data warehouse, data mart. Some people are just purely in learning phase. Global health EHR, agent that
Mhm.
finds funding opportunities for PIs that aligns with their interests. Applications to assess health literacy, trying to build AI workflows, agents to automate admin and upskill. Want to learn from Hobbs, just purely Hobbsies here. Okay, cognitive assessment tools with high sensitivity to MCI,
Mhm.
productivity tools, uh, generate book reviews, database that works with Tableau for analytics for HIV and Hep C, um, building patient caregiver support visit companion, and
Nice.
obesity management. Okay, so that is like kind of like the highlight. There's like such a like no one said the same thing, which is actually really cool. So I'll hand it over to Michael. I'll help guide some of the questions. Um, but otherwise, just Michael, if you want to just kick off with anything, you have broad reflections of why did you
Yeah.
want to build this AI 101 guide? Like, can you talk us just about the ideation in your brain?
So I had gotten a lot of signal from practicing clinicians and med students and learners both that they weren't getting enough like exposure to just what are the tools, how to use them. And there's a lot of hesitation because, I mean, if you hang around Hacker House too much, you think everyone knows all of this stuff. And that's not the case. We are definitely edge cases in Hacker House. And so I wanted to think through, and I had some ideas in my head around like how medicine and LLMs overlap a lot and how to kind of use that analogy to communicate like how you interact with patients and how you interact with learners as a clinician is very much how you interact with an LLM. Like you give it instructions, you give it detailed instructions, you redirect it, you say, hey, great job, but no, I wanted it more this way. And so I figured with Claude Code and a little elbow grease, I could probably spin something up and get something out there, kind of open source it. I wasn't like trying to create a product to sell or anything like that. So I started with the basic outline and went from there.
Okay, so yeah, so I guess go deeper a little bit of you had the idea when
Yeah.
you said basic outline, was that in a like where did you write that down?
Yeah.
I guess talk more specific tooling because I people are very
Sure.
curious to just know what the workflow has been from like that idea to writing the first prompt, or was there some other step?
Okay. I'm going to share my screen.
Awesome. Okay.
So you guys should see four windows pretty much. One is a Safari window, one is my Finder window, one's a terminal window, and one is a text editor. So I primarily live in a text editor called Sublime Text because it does lots of cool things where I can compare things next to each other. It does markdown nicely. It's basically a fancy plain text editor, right? You guys have maybe used text edit, those kind of things. But I like this because I can also do versioning from it. And so I'm going to kind of go a little more granular on some of these things because I know a lot of you know about Git and I know about those kind of things, but I'm going to assume everybody does not. And so one of the cool things about creating anything, I heard somebody wanted to do prompt tracking, that kind of stuff, is if you use GitHub, you can create a free account and you can track stuff. A lot of people think of it as primarily for tracking programming stuff, but it's not just for that. This is how I have the website. I built a website, I uploaded it to Git, and then Git hosts it for free. And what's cool about Git is you can get a lot of information about your project, but you can also do what's called versioning, which means this is what the version log looks like for the website. So it goes all the way back to when I first started looking at it. And what that does is it tracks what I did. It commits that, so it's got a memory of it. And then it like moves things up and down. It stores it in the cloud in Git, and then it pulls stuff down when I need it. And so if I'm trying to sync between like this computer and this computer, Git can be like the hub. It goes back, so GitHub. And if you are tracking files, you are tracking software, you can then have a running ledger of everything you've done, which is kind of cool. And so no matter what you build, one of the things you should get comfortable with is GitHub. And it is actually very approachable. Next thing I want to talk about real quick. The hardest thing you're going to do for people who are not technical is use the terminal. And it isn't using Cloud Code. It's actually just getting comfortable with the terminal. So if you have a Mac or a PC, you have terminal access. And you basically are just going to open terminal like that. And you're going to get a screen that looks like this. Oops. And this is where people like kind of freeze. Like, okay, now I don't know what to do, right? And if you go to Claude, it'll tell you how to do it. And so one of the nice things that you can do is like there's information online, and you can even go like this. If you go to, like, I use Claude a lot. If you use ChatGPT or Gemini, that's totally cool too. But if you go here like this and you say, how do I install Claude code in the terminal? And it'll tell you. And so you don't have to be super scared of the terminal because this is basically going to give you step-by-step instructions about how to do it. Because once we get everything installed, now you're here, and then you open up Claude right here. And now you're done. Like you don't have to worry about terminal anymore. Because from here, you can say things like this. You can say, create a Git repo, a private because you want to make sure the whole world can't see what you're doing for this project. Like you literally just talk to it. And so that's what I did. I went to Cloud Code and I said, hey, let's start a website. Let's create a repo. Let's get it on Git so I have it so you can see where I have my AO 101. This is what it looks like from a website, but this is all hosted through GitHub. See? GitHub. So I needed a free hosting thing. I didn't want to have to build a whole website on my own from scratch. So I went to Cloud Code. I had my outline. I started working through. You can actually see how the way I did it, right? Phase one. I created a few basic modules. Like I had an idea what I wanted to do as far as giving people something to use right away. Because a lot of times you'll see these AI 101 things and it's like, okay, it's like how LLMs work and what is what's a token and what's oh gosh, I'm blanking on the term. But you don't necessarily, you need the stuff. You need practical stuff. You need to be able to use stuff. And people just want to get in and get working. So I started with the idea of what's something that everybody can use, whether they're programming or not. And that was Notebook LM, right? I'd already had an idea of using that as sort of a starting point, because if you go to Notebook LM, you can see that you can do lots of cool stuff with it. Like you can make podcasts out of articles. You can make slide decks. You can make infographics. You can make, like, let me see if I get, this is all my nerdy stuff here. Let's do ADHD. So if you dump in a bunch of references here on the left, like say you, I heard HIV out there, I heard prompting out there, and then you have it generate something for you. And so here's a podcast about ADHD that I can listen to in the car. I can listen to someplace else. So this is what my goal was with creating some. This is the mind map, right? But it's just something you can just start using right away. And then I had outlines that I made here basically, and I just started free typing stuff. And so I'd be like, let's see, I can't see all who's here. I can see Olius is here. I can see David's here. I can see B's here. So I just started typing things. And then I would just copy it, put it in here and say, this is exactly how I did it though. Make me a web page talking about these awesome humans. And then it's going to be like, ooh, because I didn't tell it, right? And so what it's doing right now is it's thinking through, trying to figure out what the hell I meant by saying these awesome humans, because I didn't give it any context to work with. And then it asks me, and then I'm going to tell it. And I'm going to go here. I'm going to put that. And then it's going to create a web page. It's going to be complete nonsense because again, I didn't give it much context. I didn't give anything else, but I didn't build like a structured outline. I just started putting text in. And then I started saying, okay, create this thing for it. It's asking me some information about how I want it to be built. They might ask me some questions. I might go into planning mode. And then I go from there. So one of the things I have here already is, let's see here. I'm just going to quick start over. It's on its own. There we go. So I'm in my directory. I have all my things, but I can just tell Claude to review this directory. Okay. And it can look at all the files. Now it has a working memory of what's going on. So here's what all those files look like. And it's basically walking through them and reading them all. So when I tell it to do something next, it knows what to do.
So if I can ask, basically, you've showed us really how you got started. Now you're prompting it to develop more pages. What was the next step for you to review the content that's been created? Did you view it on locally first, like as HTML pages? Because I think some people don't know how to view what has been created sometimes, like how to render it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is my local directory. This is on my computer. This is what Claude Coded created. Every website starts with an index.html, basically. So if you can find that file and open it, let me just move the tab that just got opened over to where we're working here. So it opened it locally. So you'll see the difference here is user.hobbs downloads AI 101 HTML. So now I'm reviewing all of these things locally, and I can see what it did. So let's just start with the first module. So I had an outline. I said, hey, let's write a page. I gave it a word count that I was looking for, sort of the 3,000 to 4,000, shooting for 20 to 25 minutes of work. I see how it outputted stuff. And then I go back to it and I say, let's work on the index file. And so it's going to find it and read it. And then if I want to change something on here, I change it. Like let's say, so one of the things that I put in early on is down, if we scroll all the way down here to the bottom, is references and resources for people to look later. And you may all know this, but if you don't, LLMs hallucinate references like crazy. And partly that's because they have like a cutoff date. So let's just say it was October of last year. Other websites like PubMed and other websites like that are always kind of reshuffling the links and renaming them. And so what pointed to something in October doesn't point there anymore. So it may actually think it's got the right link. But that was one of the early things is I was getting these crazy links. Like this one, I think pointed to something about diabetes earlier on. And so I would go in through here, double check all the links, see if they were working. And one of the things I did for that was I had Gemini, which I personally think is a very good link checker because it has a really good web search function because it's Google. So I could take this same file, this index file, and then let's go to week 1, I believe is our, nope, sorry. Well, we'll just take this one. And I drop the HTML file into Gemini and I say, check the links in this file. And so I did this kind of in bulk first before I manually went through and reviewed everything. But this is how I use different LLMs to do different things. Gemini doesn't have a really good command line in the terminal like Claude Code does. They have something, I just don't think it's great. It's called anti-gravity. And they also have their own command line thing, but it's just not as good. But it is good at generating images. I don't know how many of you have used Nano Banana Pro, but you can make really cool pictures. But the other thing it's really good at is checking links. So you'll see I dropped the file and I said, check it. It's going through the URL accuracies. If it finds anything wrong, I will be a little surprised because this one should have already been reviewed. Oh, see, there's one that's already kicking off. Oh, this is internal linking. So, and this is internal linking. So see, kind of gives me a little green light, yellow light, red light. And then you can do all that automatically. You can dump all of them in there. Like I could have taken all of these files. Usually there's a limit of 10 that you can do at a time. So I put them all in and I said, okay, now check these.
And Michael, you had also built out this interesting functionality to chat with your website.
Yeah.
What was your thinking there and how did you do that?
So 2 goals with this website. One is I wanted to show what you could do using AI as your kind of co-pilot, which is a copyrighted word, but it's still a good descriptor. So Claude helped build this website more than I did, really. I had the ideas, I had the thoughts, I had the plan, but it did most of the work. And so I also wanted to do was show how you can use agents to learn. So I built this tool called X, where you can click on it and say, help me write a prompt. And it's meant for learners about... Rachel, what was your project? I see you on the screen, so I'm asking you.
I've been working on iterating on prompts for book reviews for advanced reader copies I'm getting.
Help me write a prompt about cataloging book reviews. And so I'll show you what this looks like on the back end in a second. This tool will then kind of help a learner get started. I mean, it's not going to be a perfect output, but it's sort of like step 2. Like you've done some reading, or let's say you have a question about what you are reading, because sometimes it can get a little too much lingo in there. And so say you have a question about what is an LLM, right? Because we just say that all the time and people don't realize it. Just like in medicine, right? We see PE tubes, but if you say to somebody, what does PE mean? They're like, And so we do the same thing in tech. We say LLM, we say all this other kind of stuff. And so I think it's nice to create avenues for people to ask questions where they don't feel dumb asking them, right? And so that's what this can do. And so now it's trying to refine what I want it to do, but I could also just say, what does LLM mean? And it'll tell me, and then it saves a history of the things you asked. So that way you can keep coming back to it. But here, it defined it pretty quickly. And what this looks like on the back end, this is an embedded tool that comes from a service called Pickaxe. And what Pickaxe does is it lets you build little agents that you can then embed on your website. And so here's Ask X on the back end. And here's the history of all the edits. Here are the questions people have been asking it. And if I look at it, this is what it looks like in preview. That's kind of showing me what I just showed you. But then I can edit it. And it's the same idea here is I made it a chatbot. I gave it a prompt. Okay, so this is what I'm telling it to do. These are the things I want it to do. I want to keep it simple. I pick a model for it to use. I don't want people loading files. And then I can tweak some other things. And then I get a code, HTML code, that I then give to Claude Code. So if I go here, one sec. I want to use the embed right here, which is the one you see has got the most uses. It will give me the code. Oops, where's my code? Oh, sure. So it's going to give me this code. I copy it. I take it to Claude Code and I say, put it on the web page. So let's just get out of this. And then I say, add this to my homepage. And again, I didn't tell it what to add, so it's going to think too long. But then I add that. It puts it on the homepage. I look and see where it's at. I go back to what I built. Where'd it go? and I say, oh, that's perfect, or no, it's too big, or it's too small, or I don't like the font, or change the color. And I just tell Claude and say, hey, change it.
Awesome. So what has been most frustrating when because you're a fairly advanced user and I would say you're very patient, forgiving of technology, but like what's frustrated you with this process so far? Like where do you think people generally drop off just before succeeding?
I think it's getting it 80 to 90% done, honestly. And so, you can generate, like, if I went in there and just said, hey, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there's 12 to 14 modules in here. I could say, Claude, create a whole website with 14 modules, right? But now the work comes from, I got to go through each of them and check them if I'm going to put it out into the world and say, hey, this is a cool thing I built. If it's full of spelling errors or it's hallucinated a bunch of stuff or the links don't work, it's low quality then. And that reflects on me, the person who built it. So I think you can get yourself in too deep and over engineer or overbuild something because it's easier to do that. Like I built a web app one day, and I just was kind of bored and I just kept adding features. And literally within 4 hours, Claude had written 50,000 lines of code. Right? Bollocks is like, and there's no way I'm going to check all that manually. And so if you want to build something that's kind of hardened and predictable and high quality, you sometimes have to go back and start small and then iterate on it instead of and resist the urge to, shoot the moon right out of the gate.
So this has been really good. I think I just wanted to kind of set up the foundation for Michael's process and thinking. I'll go to the chat with some questions that came up. So Aida asked about PRDs. Not everyone may know what that is. Do you actually, Aida, if you're on, do you want to give a bit more context for your question and define what that means?
Sure. I guess, as I'm looking at how you laid all this out and you're deciding, as you create all the different versions that you commit, et cetera, I would imagine as you're mapping it out, you have some sort of document that you're using to, no.
I do a lot of it.
Okay.
I do a lot of this on the fly, right? Because I get an idea.
Wow.
Literally, it'll happen. And so, but that's how I work. Not everybody works that way. So some people are very intentional about their work, right? They're going to make a PRD. And this is a website I want people to know about. It's called Chat BRD. If you want a kind of a quick start to build a PRD, it's like getting used to that if you've never done it. But it's a product requirement document, basically. It's like, these are the things I want it to have. And I just work a little more organically than that. Like PRDs to me feel like when I built them, I feel like I spend a lot of time making them. And then within minutes of starting, I've already decided I want different features. And so you either then go back and edit your PRD. And I think PRDs are useful when you're working with other people, right? Like you have a shared concept of what you're working on, or it's for someone who wants to be really organized, but you don't have to make an official PRD. You can just make an outline, right? And then just kind of keep working through it. This is an engineering product, pretty much, where people sort of say, okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, more serious engineers, it often had to do with like what components were going to be important to put into the software so that you built them in the appropriate order, because it was hard to then jerry-rig something back in if you forgot to build it the right way. And so it isn't completely applicable to when you're using natural language stuff, but it's a common schema for creating okay, what's our MVP? Like what is going to go into it? What's it going to do? Yeah. But I totally do it on the fly.
Yeah. And that's kind of cool to see too, that there's just, you can get things done having your own approach. Okay. So Rachel asked some questions.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah. I'll start with one.
Before we get to those ones, if we have time, one thing I'm wondering is like, if, what could be potential pitfalls here? Like I've been brand new to experimenting with Terminal and playing with what could I do something terribly wrong by trying to use Claude or ChatGPT?
You could if you were just kind of going YOLO mode. So there's something called dangerously skip all permissions with Claude, because what'll happen as you're working, it'll keep checking in with you. Like, hey, do you want me to do this? Hey, is it okay if I do that? And that makes the risk of something bad happening really small. But I have I actually hilariously aliased it to YOLO. And so you see it now, it says bypass permissions on. Now it's not going to check in with me. I'm going to tell it what to do, and it's just going to keep going till it's done. And if that means, hey, you've got too many files on your hard drive, I needed to make room to store this stuff, so I deleted a bunch of storage, then it's going to do that. And the other place where you can run into trouble, I think, more is Git, because setting up Git appropriately, where like Git tracks all of your files. So if you set it up too high up in your directory, so for example, you see this home page here. So Doc Hobbs is my home directory, but my project is buried 2 more levels down under downloads and AI 101. If I set Git up in my home directory, that's more dangerous because it's tracking everything in my home directory. And if I then say git commit and it says, hey, these are untracked files or you haven't committed them, should we just delete them? And you don't realize what you're doing and say yes, which I actually did. Because I was just trying to close up. It started deleting a ton of stuff in my home directory because I initialized Git in the wrong spot to start. So that's where it can be more dangerous. So YOLO mode and Git hygiene is kind of important. If you just turn Claude on anywhere normally, it's not super dangerous because it's going to keep asking you to do stuff. And I would say I wouldn't have a lot of worry about someone who isn't super familiar with the terminal using Claude code once they get into it.
Okay, that's good. Good to know this. The other thing I was wondering is if you pay for different subscriptions to each of these LLMs.
Yeah, so I pay for Claude because I use it so much. I have Gemini because it's part of my Google Workspace plan. And so I use these two because when I have Google Workspace, it's easy to get BAA with Google. And a BAA is a business associate agreement. It's really important from a HIPAA standpoint to have associated with your account if you're going to use any PHI or PII. And Anthropic also makes it relatively easy to get a BAA. And so I have BAs with Anthropic and Google. So I use these two products primarily because I have those in place. And then I don't have to worry about dumping patient information anywhere. I also had a Chat GPT business account, which I've let expire because I don't really use it anymore. But I never got a BA with OpenAI, which is one of the reasons that I moved on. So I pay for like the things that cost money here are I pay for Claude, I pay for Gemini. This feature here through Pickaxe you pay for the usage. So you have to give them a credit card, and Notebook is free at a certain level, but it's also included if you have Google Workspace for your business.
Okay. If you weren't putting patient information in, would you still do the BAA? Like, is there any other do you have privacy concerns?
I'm always curious about what the foundation models are going to do with my information if I don't have something like that in place, because they're always looking for more data to train on. And so because it's so easy to just do it, because then I think what happens with any of us who take care of patients or work with people with private information is at some point we're going to want to use these tools for that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so if you just check it off your box right away, then it's done.
Nice.
We can use the time for free-for-all questions. So there are a couple of people that joined a bit halfway into this. So Michael just gave an overview of his setup, how he makes the digital sausage, and the rest of it is just kind of open-ended questions about building stuff. So anyone can ask anything. If you guys, I know a ton of you are building things, so feel free to ask away or share anything else that would be helpful to others at this point.
Let me share one thing with you guys while we're here, since we're in Slack. Don't be afraid of Hacker House. I know people are sometimes hesitant to go into Hacker House, but there's a lot of good stuff here. And more than once, we've posted resources on learning Git and stuff like that. And if something feels just a little too deep for you, ignore it, right? You don't have to know it, but there's a lot of good basic stuff in here. Where is it? Anyhow, But you can search and find stuff in there too. And the people in Hacker House are friendly. Everybody in XPC is friendly. I mean, where's Kenneth? Kenneth just came into Hacker House recently because Kenneth is cloud coding. And the one thing I'll warn you, this is a warning. This is a legitimate warning. Vibe coding is very dopaminergic. You can get super hyped, like, because you built something and you did it by just saying, hey, build me this thing. And then suddenly you have it and you're like, oh, what else can I build? And you sometimes get wrapped up in it. There's a lot of information that's coming out now about how building with AI actually has this intensity to it that wears people out pretty quickly. There are people who are advocating for 4-hour workdays and stuff for people building with HI or AI.
Fascinating.
Hey,
okay, I think I saw a hand. Yeah. That's
hey, can you talk a little bit about your kind of workflow with respect to your organization of your files and how you're exchanging information between GitHub and kind of how do you keep things organized? Because I find that's where I'm getting really lost and my files are in weird places. And
right here, Claude. The other thing I do is I use Obsidian, but I make AI handle it for me. So Obsidian is kind of a note-taking tool, but it's kind of a techie note-taking tool. But it stores all its files in something called Markdown, which is that I showed you this at the beginning, Sublime Text. And then I tell Claude Code to keep it organized, or I tell Claude Code to keep track of it. The other thing I'll show you that I've been building, some of you may have heard of CloudBot and OpenClaw. I'm using a tool called NanoClaw, which is a containerized agent. And so I also use that to keep track of stuff. So like today I've been talking with my containerized bot about getting Nano Banana set up. But it also, like if I say to Otto, Mott is my Claude bot on a different computer, which is kind of YOLO mode for agents. But with Otto, I keep track of articles. If I find an article on like archive, I'll give it to Otto and say, hey, just keep track of this for me. And then when I say what articles have I got pending to read, it'll surface a couple. I can say, hey, summarize this for me. I cross-link. I tell my agent to cross-link all my Markdown files. So that's kind of like cross-cataloging. So they kind of connect. And in Obsidian, let me see if I can show you. You can... Let's see. Yep. This is kind of not the best view, but in Obsidian, it'll start to link all your documents together. And so the more you get, even if they're scattered all over your computer, Obsidian will track them and keep them together for you. And so, because I have the same problem, I got files everywhere all over my hard drive. So now I just make the agent keep track of it and I make Claude keep track of it.
Great question.
This should actually be called Claude Computer more than Claude Code. Some people refer to it as Claude Companion because it can do so much and people get stuck and they get it just for coding. But you could say to Claude, like, hey, help me keep track of my documents. And it'll ask you, what do you mean? What do you want it to do? And you tell it and it'll do it.
Awesome. Okay, so if you guys don't have too many questions, oh wait, we've got Dave. Dave's got a question about.
Hey, I can verbalize it if you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
To be polite. Can you talk about local host versus cloud host? Because as soon as you start talking about Obsidian and OpenClaw, there's two big camps for both those local host versus cloud host. And some of the resources and flexibility around that. I'd be interested in your take. I know you're often the local model champion in the chat.
Well, so these are the local models I have running on. This is my laptop. So this laptop has 128 gigabytes of RAM and my desktop has 256. So the biggest models I can get on here take about 65 gigabytes. And so this GPT OSS is an OpenAI open source model. And so I wired up a couple different things right now. Like I don't have my robot here, I'd show you. But this coder, local model for coding. MedGemma is a really great model for medical stuff. GPT is a great all-purpose model. When you see these cloud differentiators, this is where it can get confusing because Olama now has API where it'll query those models in the cloud. And so you don't necessarily want to use those. But you can set up Claude Code to run and use local models. You can set up NanoClaw, Nanobot. I would not use OpenClaw. If you have any like love for your information and data, don't use OpenClaw. But NanoClaw is, when I say containerized, it basically runs the bot in what's called a sandbox. So it only has access to what's in the sandbox. So it can't like run ragged over my whole system. And I've played with it with both local and cloud setups. And because I have the BAA with Anthropic, I'm feeling pretty comfortable using the NanoClaw with Claude Code. Did that answer your question, Dr. Nicole?
Yeah. Do you use any hybrid models where you run local with basically send out queries and response back? And you
mean like an agent?
Yes, correct. Do you use local agents that use cloud-based LLMs?
Do I use local agents that use cloud-based LLMs? Say more.
So when you say like you run Obsidian, I've seen models where people run Obsidian and they'll have something like NanoClaw that they'll use to transfer information locally, but then they can also send out prompts from that to Gemini or Claude.
Oh, yeah.
Bring out web-based queries without exposing TinyClaw to web-based.
Yeah. So Mott here is exposed to the whole internet. So, but also can talk to Otto. And so if I want to transmit something, Otto will kick it out to a directory that Mott can work on. And then I can manually transfer back, or I can have Mott put it in a directory. So it's basically tiers of security. Otto is the most secure. Like, it's hard to get things in and out. Only me and Mott have access to Otto's files. And then if I need something like, all right, I need you to send this to Gemini, it'll kick it out to Mott. Mott will send it to Gemini and come back. That's that little loop. And then you can use Obsidian, like you were saying, as your source of truth, where Mott can write to Obsidian and Otto can read from Obsidian, kind of almost like Git, like it's a versioning thing or like a centralized hub. That's the other way I do it.
Without becoming a network engineer, do you have an approach that like general docs can go for building that, or would you say don't even attempt to build that layer, build something focused and targeted?
I would say it depends on what your use case is, because I think if you overcomplicate it, you actually run more risks of having problems, because what's happening behind the scenes here is not as apparent. Like with OpenClaw, right? It's gone crazy on people's machines and they didn't even know it. And so if you get comfortable with just using Gemini or Claude and you have a BAA, then that might be a good place to start, because it's more transparent what it's doing. You can see it's thinking. There's a log of all your past, everything. And then I would say terminal-based agents probably for maybe V2 or V3. What do you want to build, Dave? What are you curious about?
There's a few different directions. The thing is, I have to keep corporate job work, uncorporate clinical and personal items in separate bins, and so I have to create different layers of security around which tools those are allowed to access. And I can give specifics. And work, I can use Gemini and Copilot as sanctioned external tools, but I can run whatever internal tools as long as they're locked down to a reasonable security. For my own clinical, I can run whatever I have BAAs with external. So that's, to your point, easier to get. And it's some combination of open evidence plus BAA with Claude. And then for personal projects, like I'm less security ridden about where that goes to for a lot of that information. And so I can pass it out to a lot of different sources. And so I'm trying to think of better ways to structure tools around that. Was the source of that question.
I would look, I know. So for people who don't know, Docker is basically, you can run like a computer within a computer. That's kind of the idea. Again, containerized. So it's like in its own little box. And this used to be, in the old days, you would basically partition your hard drive into different partitions and run them separately, right? And so this basically becomes the new way to do that, is you can run 3 instances that are running different things, and you can have different security levels for each one. And you can run Docker from the command line too. So that'd be the other way I look at it. Apple has a built-in container feature. You know that?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. So you don't have to use Docker. You can just use their container feature. So that's what I would do. I would build different containers.
Paul, you have some questions in the chat about.
Yeah, Deep, you got a question? It's more of a logistical question, but ask away.
Yeah. So, Michael, you said that you were able to get a BAA with Anthropic. I have a Max plan, and I was looking at how to get a BA, and I couldn't find it. Like all they said was you need to be on an enterprise account.
No, you just have to reach out to Safe. It's right there.
Oh, okay.
Do you get
so
to talk
you just
in, or is it just another bot that handles BAAs for Anthropic?
No, you'll get a person. You basically email sales.
They make people at Anthropic.
Yeah, they're fewer and fewer. So you just email sales. And I think right here, you go to the BAA and you tell them you have to have a company, but I have a LLC. And most of us, I imagine, have LLCs and S Corps and stuff. So you just shoot them an email, tell them your use case. And I put in something like, hey, I'm building tools that use patient information. And they send me back, ask me a couple of questions. It literally is like a week.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Because, I wanted to do that for the office. And, I want to play with some of the information that we have in EHRs, download them and play with them. And I just kind of was having difficulty. All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. OpenAI, very hard. They are pretty stringent about the enterprise level only.
Okay. I have Google Workspace, so I do some of it there in Gemini. Yeah. But using Claude Code in the terminal and Claude Cowork, wanted to try it with those two things.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to hear for those who, people who have listened to what Michael was sharing, what was what was interesting or surprising to you just to get a baseline? Because I think some of you had noted in the chat that, they didn't know about, what was it? You could, terminal stuff was new. I'm kind of curious, what are other people learning so far?
But I've had a really interesting couple of weeks with business partners that I've been building, patient education, avatar, AI experiences with. This group that I've been working with was really good at generative AI video for orthopedic surgeons and, people that had to repeat the same thing over and over again. And the tools are getting to the point where we don't really need them anymore. We can kind of build a lot of this stuff ourselves in our little group. And I'm really intrigued by what you're doing with MedGemma. That seems to be a reliable model that we can get access to on Hugging Face. And I talked to one of the Google, I guess she's like a researcher, and it seems really trustworthy. So my reaction is it's just great to see someone working solo to create his own tools and have the legal safeguards in place. And it's inspiring to think about what a small group of clinicians and builders can do, with just the tools that are available to us now. It seems like every 5 minutes there's something new.
Yeah. And it's a great point because if you pick one of these and start using it, you'll get good at it. And most medical professionals are min-maxers, right? So we're always looking for what's the latest, what's the best. But if you just picked Claude or Codex 5.3 and got comfortable with it and I literally mean vibed with you, it just sort of made sense to you, this is the worst it's ever going to be. You hear that all the time with AI, right? But next month, it's going to be even better. And so, I think I'd be really impressed with what people can build as a team, right? Because I'm amazed at what I'm building just on my own. I built an iOS app on a Saturday.
It's amazing.
Super cool. Yeah. Since you all brought up MedGemma, I attended a webinar for the people by one of the people who built it. And we put in screenshots of the slides in the Hacker House, one of the threads. So I just linked it to that if you guys are curious. It was really interesting to hear how they think about it. and how they almost like semi-compete with Gemini, and where the overlap with MedGemma and Gemini is just fascinating.
Well, they have a vocal model now too, so you can almost combine MedGemma with that speech to text and have like a nice little local AI scribe. There's a company called Assembly AI, if anybody's building in the AI scribe space, that is an easy to get BAA. They're one of the top speech to text companies, and it's easy to get a BAA with them also. That's what I use to build my AI scribe.
Can you spell that or put that in the chat?
Oh, sure. It's Assembly AI.
Yeah, I'm curious about that with the AI scribing in particular, because I've just found none of the products on the market are do everything that I want in terms of like writing the notes with the quality that I want them. And so one thing I've thought about is like creating something custom that would have examples of my note writing and sort of my formatting style guide as opposed to using their out of the box thing. But yeah, I was curious, like, where you would store that in relation to the model to not like overuse the memory, because the cloud-based ones seem like they run out of memory for context.
So the context, it depends on how much you're trying to dump into the node. But so this is the app. So this is, again, V2, V3 for people who want to build later. Xcode is the software you're going to use to build an iOS app. But this is the little tool I use because I have access to Elation's API. So I built a little tool that I can see my schedule, I can see my patients, and I can just open up the app and hit record. I've never run out of context, even with like 60-minute visits. And then I just process it here at the end. Like I've got a recording here to review. I do it, turns it into a note. And I can run this on my computer or on my laptop. This is what I built. But I mean, you could do this in isolation if you have Anthropic BAA and then Assembly AI BAA, you could make an AI scribe for yourself on your phone relatively easily.
That's amazing.
Maybe that'll be a fun let's build it live thing, because I think a lot of people are very curious about the scribe. And I've even remembered you shared or maybe I don't know if it was you, but a way to, no, I think it was Russell, where it was basically you can use coaching, like these meeting recording tools. They can kind of take at your transcript, and if you're trying to get better at sales, it can be like, hey, you like could have like asked this follow-up question after the customer wasn't whatever sure, like whether you have clinical or business applications. I think it's super interesting here.
Well, and my main use case was I need diarization. So I'll have a parent come in with 2 or 3 kids at the same time, and I need to split those into separate notes. And most AI scribes struggle with that. And so I needed one that could do better diarization. And now it's magical. I mean, I get 3 notes. I've had families come in where they just bring up the other kid. They're like one question and it makes a note for them. I'm like, this is amazing.
That's really cool. So we'll maybe pause here just to give people some buffer to their next meeting. I'll stop the recording. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Michael, for being so generous with just sharing like how your brain works, how your workflows are, and just like really amazing to see. So appreciate that. I think up next is going to be Kareem. Is it next week or 2 weeks? He's going to talk about what he's built and specifically around medical education. And then I think if anyone else wants to come and share like their process, I think we kind of crowdsource the learning and the mistakes that people maybe discover on their own so that others don't have to repeat them. So yeah, reach out.
And reach out to me if you have questions. I'm happy to chat.